Right guys, so as I mentioned, I'm going to take you through today's workout. I probably won't put the whole workout on here, I'll crop through it a little bit, but I want to give you a little bit of an understanding as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I think this is a really good session. Say if you're an athlete, so if you're a football player, rugby player, and you want to get some additional low intensive work in, but that's going to have a carryover to the sport, I think this is a great tool. Because the thing when it comes to like developing athleticism, in my opinion, people focus too much on speed, strength. You know, they're important, but the strongest people aren't the best athletes always, and the fastest people aren't always the best athletes. The best athletes are the best movers. Now, if you're strong and fast and move really well, then that's what you're aiming for, right? But the foundations of being an athlete is having a really broad and diverse range of movements to be really efficient in how you move. And this little session is a great way of training that and looking for areas of your movement capacity that maybe you don't have full access to just yet. And this is a nice low intensive way of practicing it. So obviously, the moment you add speed to anything or load to anything, you know, the margin for error gets smaller. The margin for learning gets smaller. So actually slowing things down and allow yourself to learn the skills. And essentially you're going to recognize, any of you that have played football, rugby or any sport, this is essentially every warm-up you did when you were 8, 9, 10 years old, but just done with a bit more intent and a bit more understanding as to why we're doing what we're doing. So going to just use 10 meters for me today. Like if you wanted to make this a bit more challenging, you could do it over 20 meters. That would definitely be a bit more of a cardiovascular session and a bit more strengthening in and around the hips, but let's go through it. All right, so I'm going to start with just a nice easy warm up. I've got my heart rate monitor on, so I'm going to just sort of track sort of where my heart rate is, just so you guys can kind of see what this session kind of brings to the table. So it's going to start off with just a nice easy sort of jog through the 10 meters. So just nice and easy, just start to warm the body up a little bit. Just zigzags back. Like skips. Okay, so we'll then go through some little stretching walks. Now you can do this on the spot, or you can do this in a gym. You haven't got to be outside, and it might actually be better to do it on softer surface. If you're looking for a lower intensive workout, barefoot, you could do this. I haven't trained for about 4 days, been sort of laid up in bed. Body's feeling stiff, so it's going to be a good session just to get the body moving. Where was I? Yeah. Oh, a few clicks and cracks there. Now with any of these exercises that I'm doing, they're all interchangeable. If you've got other ones that you prefer to do, if you've got calf stretches that you want to do, add them in. Like, you've got freedom to kind of play with this, nothing set in stone. We want this to be diverse. So there's areas of weakness that you know you have, tightness that you know you have, add this in, okay? This is just general, Okay, I'm not married to any of the movements. Okay, let's start to pick things up a little bit. Still going through. So the way I liken this is any good warm-up. So if we're on a field, getting ready to go and play football or sprint or do anything, is that the warm-up should kind of reflect what we're about to do, but kind of gently going through the gears. So we're kind of going through gear 0 now, walking, light jogging. Going to pick it up now to gear 1, gear 2, gear 3, gear 4, and then eventually we build into the sprints. So when you look at this session or any good warm-up, you should see how it bleeds into the actual session you're going to do. Okay, it shouldn't be completely separate. So we're going to just start with a few sort of light dynamic movements. And again, what we're looking for here is light and quick. Okay, we then go into light and fast. We then go into hard and fast. Okay, so just some nice light high knees. Just walk back recovery. You can jog back again if you want to make this a bit more cardiovascular. Jog back in between. Again, that will just keep the heart rate elevated. Take my chain off because I think it's rattling against the microphone. So next one we're going to go through is hip circles. Okay, so we've all done this before at football practice and training. The common mistake people make is that they turn their whole body when they do this movement. So actually you're not really getting any hip rotation, you're getting trunk rotation. So I like to do these strict and then I like to do them dynamic. So the strict variation, the cue that I use is imagine your belly button has a laser beam and you're trying not to let that laser beam move side to side. Okay, so you're trying to keep nice and strict, allow the hip to articulate through a full range of motion. So it's here, over, as high as you can, a couple of steps in between, otherwise it will take forever to go the full sort of 10 meters. But big, sort of imagine that hurdler step over of a hurdle. We're trying to just replicate that and just take the hip through a big range of motion. And then we do the same thing going backwards. So again, trying not to allow your body to turn and torso to face. We're just here, bring it back and round. Again, we're looking to work not only the hip joint as in terms of just getting it to articulate, but the muscles that control that. You know, so when you do this properly, if you follow me through this at some stage and do this workout, you're going to feel that this is endurance and fitness work for the muscles of the hip. Okay, when we're sprinting and going full tilt and running like you would be in a game, you want to make sure the mechanics stay with you. All right, there's a reason why in a game of football, I think it's 75% of all injuries happen in the last 10 minutes of the first half and the last 15 minutes of the second half, because that's when you're at your most fatigued. So when fatigue comes in, mechanics change, coordination changes, and the goal of fitness is to sort of to combat that fatigue so that you are just as fit and just as fast and just as strong in the last 15 minutes of the game as you were at the first 15 minutes. Now it's a big ask, but that's what our training should be preparing us for. Okay, so now we're going to the dynamic variation. Again, I'm a little bit more lenient on the torso here, but still trying to minimize it, all right? Because we're still trying to work the hips. And the same going back. So you can see we're just getting a bit more dynamic now through the movement. We're warming the body up. Okay, and from here, we can go through some hip, like leg swings. I'm not going to bother moving the camera, but you could do these supported either with a partner, but just get the, I'm going to need to anchor something here. So now we're just getting the tissues around the legs and the hips exposed to some more faster movements. You know, because if we're going to build into sprints, you know, and the sport, we need to get the body ready for that. The reality is that like my only real criticism of the sort of modern fitness industry and the modern fitness trends is that it's very one-dimensional. You know, even with the emergence of things like the hybrid athlete, which is sort of verging outside of the four walls of the gym, it's still relatively one-dimensional, right? We're running, we're cycling at a similar paces every time, right? You might be going your speed workout where you drop down to 4 minute per Ks, where your normal running speed is 5.5, but it's actually still quite a tight bandwidth. What the good thing about this is we're training the body to move in many different ways that our sport doesn't normally allow for. Okay, and one of the big roles of training should be it should fill in the voids that our sport and the main activities that we want to do don't account for, because the body operates a use it or lose it policy. So when we are younger, when we're at school, we're playing sport, every day we access many different movements. When we're in the playground at school, regardless of what you're doing, PE, you know, and the older we get, you know, we might still run or go to the gym, but life becomes very stagnant, right? We sit in chairs, we go from one chair to another, we drive to work, to sit at the office, to drive home, to sit on the sofa, you know, and then our training becomes one-dimensional. We lift weights, we run, we do whatever, but actually what we need to make sure we're doing is we don't lose our ability to move, right? We take that for granted through our 20s, I feel, and then when we get 30, we feel stiff and we get hurt and our back aches and all this sort of stuff. Now, this session that I'm kind of breaking up to talk to you right now is accessible to everyone. I don't care whether you're 18 or 58. You can go through a variation of this, just doing it at your own intensity, right? Just start moving, going through some high knees, some butt kicks, some side strides. You know, just get the body moving in many different ways. Okay, so now we're going to just go through similar drills, high knees again, but now with a bit more intent. So again, we're going through the gears. First one was light and quick. We're now going light and fast. Okay, so again, it's all about exposing the muscles to the dynamic nature, to the speed of the movement. So next one, we got stiff leg runs. Okay, so again, what we're looking for here is to strike the ground under the foot. Okay, when people do this, when I coach people, football players, I think it's the sport of kicking, is that when people do this, they kick. They're focused on bringing the foot up. You actually need to be focused on dragging the foot back. We're trying to pull ourselves forward. Now, this is strengthening and building the posterior chain as it relates to sprinting, right? Hamstring pulls are a big one in sprinting and changing direction. So we just need to make sure we're preparing the body for that. So this should look I don't know if you can hear the ground contact through this microphone, but you're trying to make a loud ground contact. Whereas if you get caught in the trap of kick, the ground contact is secondary. If I can talk properly, I'll do one more time, do that so you can kind of see that one, because this is one that people often mistake. You know, we are front side dominant, quads anterior dominant. Trying to use the posterior chain is a skill that we need to learn. You know, which is why in the gym work I do a lot of posterior chain work. So we're trying to strengthen all these guys. All right. And to give you guys an idea of what I'm thinking about when I'm doing that, I'm actually hit, float, hit, float. So I'm trying to float between ground contacts. So heart rate's rising quite nicely now. All right, so we've got A skips. So this is rhythm, coordination, timing, all of that stuff. Also adding a bit of a bounce in, okay? Again, mistake that people make here, an A skip will often look like this. You're focusing pulling the knee up too much. It's the striking of the ground, the timing of that. The knee should be afloat, the hitting down should be the focus. So, start bouncing. Okay, so remember, we should be able to do this on the spot. A mistake that people make when they sprint and run, foot goes out in front. We want to strike. strike, so that we're pushing ourselves forward and not exposing ourselves to load and unnecessary load and potential injuries. Okay, so this is rhythm and timing. The foot should always land next to the other foot. And again, you're trying to get that, it's almost like mixing tracks, right? You're trying to get the right foot and the left foot to land at the same time. So there's almost like a double tap, single tap, double tap, single tap. One more time. Now, that's 10 meters, if 10 meters. You start doing this over these drills over 20 meters, whew, man, I tell you, gets you blowing and gets the hips working. Great exercise. You know, we are 10 minutes in and I'm talking. You should be able to get through this warm up all the way up to full sprints in 15 minutes. Okay, this shouldn't take too long. 15 minutes at the beginning of any practice session, 2-hour training session of football, it's a small investment. And I think it goes a long way to preparing ourselves to stay somewhat resilient and robust. All right, so we're going to go through some stability work now. So we slow things down a little bit before we go into some more dynamic sprint specific work. Okay, so what I call this is a strict lunge series. Okay, so we do many different lunges, but the strict variation is all about making us really strong on one leg. Okay, now I've had athletes come to see me who can squat 2.5 times body weight, but they can't do one set of strict walking lunges because they don't train single leg stability. Okay, because you might do step ups and lunges, but you don't spend any time at stability, right? Walking lunges generally with weight, we're here. Okay, when we come to running mechanics, we need to be really good at being here. Okay, hip fully extended, glute contracted. There's an equal and opposite relationship between the front leg and the back leg. What I mean by that is if I stand here, okay, the higher I lift this leg, the harder this glute has to work to maintain, otherwise that happens. Okay, so what we're trying to do is to be as tall as you possibly can. Now, for me, that's important because I'm only like 5'8", so I'm trying to be as tall as I can all the time. That's why I've got jacked calves, because I'm always on fucking tiptoes. But it's understanding that I want here, here, here. And we'll see this as you come through the progressions of the running progressions. We want to be as tall as we can, right? The difference between sprinting and flying is that with sprinting, you touch the ground, but you're trying to touch it less and less and less. Okay, the least times you can touch the ground. Now, if I run squatted, which might be necessary for acceleration, but top speed, I need to be as tall as I can be. Okay, because then I can get up off the ground, and I'm using full hip extension to get up. Okay, so with a strict lunge series, trains that in many different ways. So standard walking lunge, so we start in this position. So here, knee up, toe up, shoulders back. I'm trying to be as tall as I can be in this position. I lunge, and then I come up. Okay, and again, it's not as easy as it might look. Okay, we do the same thing in reverse. Now this changes things a little bit, right? So again, you start here, you lunge back, and then you push and pull. That front leg, you push and pull. You push too hard, you're gonna fall backwards. You don't push enough, and you're gonna have to put your foot down before you get up. So it's learning force control, how hard to push to get you back, how hard to push you too far, how little to push to not push you far enough. It's like a volume switch that we're trying to learn. So if I'm starting, I push and pull that leg. So I come into this position, push and pull. And already you can start to feel these muscles switching on and warming up. Next one is lateral. I do these on the spot. So again, starting knee up, toe up, I lunge out. This leg stays straight and I push back up. just 5 each side is good enough on these. Again, this should be a workout that you do a couple of times a week. I mean, I probably do this warm up 3 times a week. So I'm getting a lot of exposure to these lunges on a weekly basis. It's not about doing 100 of them in a session. I would rather you do 20 of them 4 times a week, because it's a skill that we need to practice. And that's what you got to do. So you got to think about it like you're learning a language, like you're learning a musical instrument. Little and often is way better than 1 intensive session. All right, so that's and then we've got the strict single leg hip hinge. Now this one is a tough one. So again, we start here. I do this one walking, but again, you can do it on the spot. Hinge over, find that stability here, and then pull. Step, reach, up. And again, try not to get sloppy and lazy with these and kind of just fall. Torso, everything stays erect, right? Everything stays upright. I'm here and then I drive. Again, it's not easy. You'll find you have one leg that you find easier to balance on than the other. That's natural. You know, one thing I've always found as I've coached a lot of football players, if they're right-footed, their left leg is more stable because they're so used to landing to kick. Their right leg has more mobility. So again, these sort of things can help balance out that a little bit. You know, it's maybe not going to fix the problem, but because you're going to kick a ball a lot more times, you're going to do this. But it's understanding that like we're trying to minimize the imbalances, right? All right, so that's the single leg hip hinge. Right, now we're going to go into the sprint specific drills. So first one, playing off of that one, is called the switch and stick. So now all of a sudden here, because sprinting is switching limbs, right? I don't push, wait for the other foot to come down and push. It's a here, it's a switch. As I said, the opposite and equal of the hip. The harder I push this leg back to hit the ground, the harder the other knee comes up, and then it's a switch, and a switch, and a switch. That's how we create maximum propulsion going forward. Okay, it's not a push, push, push. It's a switch, switch, switch. So we're practicing that switch drill. And again, for some of you, if you haven't done this before, it won't come naturally. Okay, now this doesn't just carry over just to field-based sports or sprinting. For hybrid athletes, for anyone that's just into running and lifting, this is an important component to train, right? To learn how to use the hips as a dynamic force producer is important. So switch and stick. So we start as we would do that lunge, and then we're just literally switching and sticking on one leg. Now the goal here is I'm lifting this leg, not putting this leg down. Most people do this and then they do a little jump. Now, and there it is. That is a challenging movement, okay? Because you're having to stabilize on ground contact, which if you're unstable on ground contact, how can you expect to produce any force? All right? I want to make sure that if I'm striking the ground, it's sending me in the direction that I want to be going. You know, and you can do this laterally as well to a certain degree. So there's drills that we can do, which I'll go over, which is just teaching us to apply force laterally as well. Because if you're a football player, rugby player, you're not just running in straight lines, right? You need to cut, change direction. So it's important that we train neuromuscularly and muscularly how to perform those movements. So that was the switch and stick. Again, 10 meters is enough to begin with. Earn the right to do the next rep. So what you don't want to do is what people who aren't very stable on ground contact do. They don't spend any time in ground contact. Stick. Yep, and again, practice, practice, practice. Don't advance yourself if you can't do level 1. This is level 1, okay? So we switch and stick level 1. We've got triple switch and stick, which I still class as level 1. So it's 1, 2, 3 stick. Again, gets a bit harder, gets the heart rate up. Okay, level 2 is we now add a little bounce in between, so there is no exaggerated stick of the movement. So we'll go back to the single, and what we're looking for is just a little dynamic pop off that stiff leg before you then switch again, switch again, switch again. So again, not as much focused on stability, but rhythm, timing. Another thing that's worth pointing out in all these drills, doesn't matter whether they're high knees, butt kicks, side to sides, look into the horizon. You shouldn't need to look at the ground to see where your foot's landing, right? It's learning to feel that, okay? Because our chest and shoulders will follow what our eyes look at. So if I'm here. Chest up, shoulders back, I'm going that way, look that way, okay? Next one, triple version. 1, 2, 3 bounce, 1, 2, 3 bounce. Woo. And now we just take out that pause. And what I mean by that is we're just going into what I call bouncy high knees. So I'll visual it first. Essentially, it's exactly the same as what I was just doing, but without landing on one leg for any period of time. So it's just bounce, 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 bounce. This should replicate top end speed a little bit. I always start this with one knee up, same as I would start the other ones, right? So the focus there is still up. Right, so from there, we're going to go into some build-up sprints. So these are going through the gears. These are not flat out. Build-ups are, we're going to do 20 meters, or I'm going to do 20 meters. And you should be getting close to 90% in that final meter. Okay, so build, 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 stop as it gets to top end. Okay, this is just exposing the mechanics to sprinting. We're not sprinting. These are build-ups. So we're going to start in the 3-point, just as 2-point stance. And all we're going to do is focus on hit, 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 and it should get quicker, 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 and then we cut it. Ooh, I feel a bit heavy and lumbersome today. That's what 4 days being unwell will do to you. And another reason why you don't want to max out today. Body isn't primed for it. This session will prime me into tomorrow's session, which will prime me into the exact, and that's what training should be. Setting you up for success tomorrow. Don't allow today's session to ruin tomorrow's, which is what so many people do. They go so hard in the gym, squats, deadlifts, whatever, so much DOMs, and they can't really do anything the next couple of days. Now actually dial back that volume and get more exposure through the week. Do more. All right, I'm gonna do one more of them before we go into a jump series. Hydrate, 'tis warm. Right, let's talk jumps. So we've got our body primed, right? That could be the end of the warm-up as far as I'm concerned. Again, that took me 25 minutes to describe it to you. Again, that's 15 minutes under if you just go through it. And you've got the body primed, ready, go and play sport, go and do a few sprints, you're good to go. If you want to turn this into more of an aerobic session like I'm kind of doing, we add a bit more. We can almost go through that again, those drills again. Heart rate's in that kind of zone 2-ish, lower end of zone 2. So this is a cardiovascular aerobic session while still working skills that are going to be transferable to the field of play or the sport that you want to do, or life, because fuck it, like you need to be able to move. Right? You need to be able to move. So movement is the foundation of everything, right? You neglect movement and you just focus on exercises, you're missing the foundational component of staying fit, staying strong, staying healthy, right? Minimizing injuries. I'll say this over and over again. Injuries are our biggest obstacle to progress, right? There's something very noble in about work ethic and pushing hard, but you also need to understand where you need to push hard and work hard in and what you shouldn't neglect, because it's very easy to get very I felt this when I was doing the marathon. I just focused on running, and the reality is that to be diverse, to be fit, to be able, is to be able to do many things, right? And that not only minimizes your risk of injury, it keeps training varied and fun. It's not just going to the gym and slogging it out, which might be your wheelhouse and it might be what you love to do, but sometimes, you know, you got to do shit that you don't like. You know, if it keeps you healthy, keeps you strong, that allows you to keep doing things you do like. Just take it for someone that's been ill for 4 days, right? I love doing this shit, and not being able to do it was tough, right? So being injured and being out of action is not what we want, right? So looking after ourselves and the way we move and looking for little individual discrepancies you might have between right and left. Oh, why do I find this harder on that foot and not this foot? This is all valuable tools that you can have to be like, shit, maybe, oh, that's funny, I keep injuring my left ankle, but it feels weak when I do these certain drills. You've got something to work on there that's going to make you more robust, right? So every rep, every session, every set gives you some clues as to things you need to work on, but you need to be willing to look for them, right? And not just go through, because what I've shown you already, as I said at the beginning, is nothing different to what you may or may not have done when you were 8, 9, 10 years old playing football. The difference is now we've added a different perspective as to why we should be doing it. I was never taught the reasons why, mainly because the coaches doing it didn't know why they were doing it. They were just doing it because that's what they always did. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no blaming attached to that. But now it's like, okay, now when I do these hip circles, why am I keeping strict and keeping rigid? What's the purpose of that? Because most people have shit hips. Right? We sit down all day, you know, whether that's in a car, you know, at our desk or on the sofa. You know, so our hips get shit. So let's make them less shit by fucking training them. Not rocket science, really. Right, so jumping, low intensive jumps, right? Strengthening the foot, ankle, like lower part of the leg is vitally important if you're a runner, sprinter, field athlete. Shin splints are a pain in the ass, but shin splints aren't. The answer to shin splints is that you just did too much volume. You did more volume than your tibialis anterior was able to handle. Okay, so if you go for a run and for argument's sake, let's say you get to 10K and then shin splints come on, 10K is kind of the limit for that tissue. Now that's not your limit cardiovascularly, it's your limit from a muscular standpoint of dealing with that load, okay, that repeated load, right? So we need to train and strengthen those muscles around that foot and ankle and leg and hip to be able to handle high volumes of load. Now in order to do that, it's the drip by drip approach. There's no amount of volume that I can do today that's going to make me fit as a fiddle. It's a continual drip by drip by drip and constantly doing it. Okay, it's doing the boring, doing the mundane, unfortunately. Right, so we're going to start off because this is all about training ground contact. Okay, whether you run, play football, play rugby, sprint, everything is about ground contact. Can I apply force into the ground? Okay, if I can't do that efficiently and I'm going to repeatedly do that, then unfortunately technique's going to break down and then I'm going to pick up repetitive strain injuries. So first one we do is pogo jumps. Now with this one, this is foot and ankle only. We're not going through the knee. Okay, so what I want is as I strike the ground, I pick my toe up and I punch down through the front of the foot. Stay as tall as you can, as stiff as you can. Simple, not easy, okay? What you'll see with people like this is that their torso will give out. Lots of slack in the body. Stiffen, straighten, tap, tap, tap. I don't care about the height. The height's not important. Okay, people want to make this too hard. You can do pogo jumps for height. It's a different exercise. This is now rhythm. Can I strike the ground here? Okay, underneath my body with the forefoot and use that to hit the ground and be stiff on ground contact. Okay, when we start to use the hips and the knees, which is what most people want to use because most people have weak feet and ankles, because who the fuck trains feet and ankles? Everyone trains quads, hamstrings, glutes, deadlifts, squats, etc. So you get people doing this, it's flat-footed and it's all legs. Okay, so there's no feet. So it's no wonder we pick up repetitive strain injuries because we can't even do a simple thing fresh well. So let's practice that, okay? Next one we're going to do is going to be rotational pogo. So now getting us to move our body. So same thing, you do 3 jumps facing forward. I'm going to turn to my left for 3 jumps, turn backwards for 3 jumps, turn here, and I'm just going to repeat that for the 10 meters. So now we're going to go laterals. So I mentioned these earlier in the session. Learning to push off the ground laterally, right? If I'm running, I need to change direction. Whether I'm playing rugby, I need to step and move. Or I've got the ball and I need to step and move in football. The hips need to be able to push us laterally, okay? Because the tendency we make, the mistake that people make is they don't use the standing leg to push, they use the other leg to reach. Now, if I land in this position, that is not a very nice position for my knee to be in. So the lateral bound, I'm going to do this down the track, but I'll show you facing the camera first. This is here. Okay, can I push off the right leg? You'll notice that my left leg didn't reach. So I'm not over here. This leg stays tight to my body because I'm landing down under my center of mass, so that if I need to push back, I can. All right, so we're going to do this for the 10 meters. I'll show you how to do this one. So we're sitting in on this one, okay? It's not about being tall, okay? Because we need to have some movement so that I can project myself. So here, I'm going to come off onto my right leg, stick, okay? And again, figure out how hard to push. This is not maximal, sub-maximal. And we'll go back the other way. Oh God, that's tough. I haven't done that for a while. And the reality is, on these little jump circuits, I'll show you in another video, I'll show you how I do this in a gym before my lower body session, so you've probably seen it, some of it. Add variation here. Don't always do the same movements. You can do the laterals like I've done there, you can do zigzags, you can do single leg pogos, you can do single leg lateral pogos. Like, add as much variation here. What you're trying to do is expose your body to movements, landings in a safe environment that you're not normally used to. You know, because all that does is just strengthen all of the muscles in and around the foot to learn how to control ourselves through that, right? You'll find that one of the ones I really like is backward single leg hops. First time you do that, it's like fucking speaking a different language, right? Because it changes everything when you can't see where you're going or see where you're landing. It gives you a whole different sort of kinesthetic awareness. Is that the right word? Body awareness. Let's go with that. So it gives you a whole different sort of body awareness when you can't see where you're landing, right? So challenging yourself to be diverse in all these movements, and this is the perfect opportunity to do that. All right, so now we're going to go zigzags. Now, I've coached so many football players over the years, like managing football teams and doing this, and I've seen all the mistakes that be made, right? And the reality is, they're not really mistakes, they're just a lack of competency in the right muscle groups, because most people don't train to be a football player. They train in the gym to be a bodybuilder, and then they expect that to carry over to football. And I'm being harsh there, because they go there, they do squats, they do leg presses, they do leg extensions, they do leg curls, they do all this stuff, and then they save all their athletic movement for when we're training in a team training session. Well, that's a football session that we're doing a little bit of athletic work. You should definitely be doing athletic work outside of those sessions, right? Practicing, becoming a better athlete. Being strong is one cog in that, okay? It's not the full set of cogs, you know? So taking time to do this stuff, and you can see here, like I'm breathing heavy, but I'm not working that hard. You know, I can make this intense, but this is just skill acquisition, skill practice. Okay, so back to the zigzag bounds, right? we're going laterally. Okay, we're not going forward. Most people want to turn this here, right? I'm middle of this lane, I'm trying to get to the middle of that lane. I'm broadening, I'm going across this white line, and I'm going 45 degrees, not sticking the landing too much, and it's bound, 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 bound. So this one is training us to exactly know where to put our foot outside of our center of mass. If I'm running, I need to change direction to go this way. Where do I put that foot? So when we're doing the jumps, we're exposing our body to a little bit more load than we might do if we're running. Not necessarily if we're running full tilt, but if I overreach, it feels awkward. If I underreach, it doesn't feel good either. So it's learning exactly where to do that. Now this is one of the reasons why we do those lunges as well, right? We should be in complete control of a 1 meter radius. I know exactly where to put my knee. If I overstride, my knee's exposed, or if I understride, I'm exposing my knee. So it's the same with the lunge. I should know, eyes shut, exactly where to put that foot. Exactly where to put that foot. See what I mean? So it's learning to be in complete control of our immediate environment, and where that might carry over. If I'm walking down the street and someone accidentally bumps into my back, I know where to put the foot. I've practiced it over and over and over again. All right, trip and falls, stumbles, you know, these are things that, especially as we get older, wreak havoc. That'll be the jump series for today. I think we've done 5 exercises there, right? Can we do 5? No, 4. 4's good. Again, a couple of rounds of that. Build that up. Add a 5th, add a 6th. I'm going to do a video on all my jumping variations. I need to write them down because there's a lot of them. Just so you've got tools in your tool belt, what to use. Then from here, you could either, depending on how you're trying to utilize this session, you could go into a bodyweight circuit. So you could do something like push-ups, mountain climbers, some ab work, some core work, some bodyweight lunges, some jumps, you know, some tuck jumps, some squat jumps, and create a little bodyweight circuit for 10-15 minutes. That would take us up to best part of 45 minutes of a workout that you've kind of ticked a box and got loads of quality work done. You could go into some sprints from here. You know, I'm going to do a few little build-up sprints, nothing crazy, just get the body moving a bit quicker. Because I'm probably going to go to the gym a little bit later if I'm feeling all right. Or you could call it there. Or you could go like extend this out, do the lunges twice, do the jumps twice, do the drills twice. All of a sudden you've got a 40-minute session where you've built some aerobic capacity, you've built some skills, you know, some coordination, some rhythm, some timing, and then you have, or, you know, you could go into a circuit where you're doing a bit more of a fitness-based session. You know, again, nothing new I've gone over here. I haven't reinvented the wheel. Hopefully I've given you a bit more context as to how I use it and why I've used this on a day like today, 4 days out from not really training. This is an introduction back into movement. I've got my hips working, I've got the blood pumping, I definitely feel looser, my heart rate's up. You know, I've definitely got a bead on. I mean, granted I'm in Thailand, so I'd have a bead on just sitting on the balcony, but understanding that there's more to just training than just going out for a run. If I'd have gone out for a run today, I wouldn't have done anything for my stiffness. I'd have probably added to it. Now I feel loose. You know, now I feel set up for the next session I do, whether that's this afternoon or tomorrow. You know, and it's understanding that my key focus in all of these channels and the online coaching that I do is I want to build better athletes. Now, I don't care whether you're a football player, a rugby player, or just a 50-year-old guy that wants to get in better shape, you're an athlete. Okay, and just because you play a sport doesn't mean you're an athlete, because some of the best football players in the world are terrible athletes. Some of the best rugby players in the world are terrible athletes. They don't go together necessarily. Okay, a good athlete is very diverse in their range of motion, has good body awareness, good spatial awareness, and can move their body efficiently and quickly through space. That, for me, defines an athlete, regardless of whether you play sport or not. And I think you should train like that, because we're designed to be athletic, right? There's like, you go to look at hunter-gatherer tribes that are still out there now, they're fucking athletes. They're jumping, they're playing, they're going through very diverse movements. They're not sat down all day, right? Current lifestyle for most people is we sit down too much. So our training should fill those voids. If we're spending 10 hours a day sitting down, and then we go to the gym and all we do is squat, leg press, leg curl, leg extension, we've actually reinforced the sitting pattern. We haven't got outside of the way we move. right? We need to challenge that. We need to diversify and diversify the way we train. So that's going to be a lot of the message that I bring to this. Is yes, there'll be some gym work. Yes, there's going to be squats. Yes, there's going to be leg extensions, leg presses, leg curls, but they are one piece of a 100-piece jigsaw puzzle. And it's learning to pan out, zoom out, and to see training for what it is. Training is not the hardest gym session you've ever done. Training is a series of sessions that are going to make me a better, more robust version of myself. You know, less likely to get hurt, better performer. You know, and that can be at the flipping parents' day at your kid's school, you know, where you're just moving well. You know, they might not win the sack race, and who gives a fuck about the sack race, but at least move well so you don't have to spend 4 days in bed afterwards. Yeah, so I'm going to call that there for the video. I'm going to have to edit this down because it's going to be like 40 odd minutes long, but I'll do my best. Yeah, I might just post it as is actually. Fuck it.